Welcome to Off the Wall. My name is Trey. Thank you so much for taking the time to check out the show this week. We've got a good one for you, shorter than usual. We're rolling guest free this week as we're just going to dive into the latest action of the IFL and the TAL and talk about the last couple weeks of the regular season approaching and what the playoff picture might look like in both of these leagues. The IFL is pretty clear, but pretty muddy at the same time. And the TAL, a bunch of teams are still in it. So some exciting action from this past weekend, including one of the best weekends of football that we've seen all year, regardless of league. So excited to dive into that. But before we dive into that stuff, it's time for social plugs. That is right. If you're not already, please make sure you're following us on all the socials at Off the Wall FB. F as in foot, B as in ball, Off the Wall FB. We're on your TikTok, we're on Instagram, we're on X/Twitter, we're on all the things and stuff. So make sure you're giving us a follow. Links to each of those will be in the description below, regardless of where you're watching or listening from. Join the conversation. It's fun to throw some hypotheticals out there and hear from the masses. It's been fun engaging with some folks and a lot of folks I've been chatting with throughout the entire arena and indoor season this year has been really cool to see and to see them come out of their shell and to, get some takes off because everyone's got some takes. You got to get them off somehow. So that's a good place to do it. And if you're watching on YouTube, please make sure you're liking the video and subscribing to the channel as well. Helps us grow. We've been getting some good traction on that lately. So appreciate all the support there. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please make sure you are rating the show page as well. So you click through, you click on the episode and then the name. It should take you to a show page, preferably 5 stars. That'd be great. To rank the show and leave a review about what you like about the show, what we do here, and give some glowing reviews to folks that may be checking it out for the first time and may be interested in listening. So we'll be developing some cool ideas into the off season of arena and indoor football, working on some things with some other shows and some other content creators that should be pretty fun. But we'll announce some of that stuff as we get closer to the off season, as the IFL starts to wrap up its season, as the TAL starts to wrap up its season. We're almost to the end here, and it's crazy to see how far we've come in such a short time. But we're going to start with the IFL, and we're going to start with the first game from this past weekend. It was the Vegas Nighthawks at the Bay Area Panthers, and Bay Area won this game 55-54, and it was a banger. It was so good, and this was one of those games I had circled on the calendar as one of the prime games of the week. And it was going to decide a lot of things in the Western Conference playoff race, where if Vegas had won this game, Bay Area drops to the middle of the pack with the rest of the West. And Vegas has a chance to get that home field and has a chance to make things interesting. But since Bay Area won this game, they have a firm grasp on first place in the Western Conference. And this was a picture perfect get back game for this offense and for a team that really struggled last week in the California Clash against San Diego. They had over 155 team rushing yards on the ground. Josh Jones at quarterback had 92 of those and 3 touchdowns. Josh Tomas had 61 yards and 2 touchdowns, and Tosin Oyakami scoring as well. And Josh Jones played really well in this game through the air as well, and was able to really pick apart a Vegas defense that was playing pretty damn well up to this point in the season. And in the IFL, you can only do so much for so long. But defensively, Bay Area, they had some moving parts over the last month, and they're starting to mesh. Like I don't want to say this was a good game for them because they still gave up 54 points and almost gave up the game-winning 2-point conversion with no time left. But this game came down to the wire, and Bay Area made a play at the very end to seal the win. And like I said, they're in the driver's seat for that 1 seed in the West. And I think if they win one of their next 2 games, they lock it up. So it'll be a good finish to the season for Bay Area, and it's looking like they'll be the number 1 seed in the West yet again. But for Vegas, they played really well on offense in this game, and I think they might be outsmarting themselves a little bit with this 2-quarterback system that they have going. So in case you haven't been watching Vegas Nighthawks games, or you didn't watch this game, you need to go watch this game as soon as this episode's done. Go watch this game. But quarterback Jaden DeLauro, he was the starter in this one, and then they would bring in quarterback Jerome Johnson when they got near the red zone or in a short yardage situation, which makes sense on paper, right? DeLauro is a better passing QB. Johnson's a much more dangerous ground threat and that true dual threat, because you saw what he was able to do in 2024 as he was the league MVP. And you want to make defenses account for that in short yardage situations. But the frequency in which they were switching back and forth in the second half, it seemed to throw off the groove of the offense a little bit. And it got to a point where you're like, all right, we need you to commit one way or the other. Either commit to having Johnson as that dynamic uh, ground threat and dual threat at all times, or lean on Delora to be that better passing quarterback because he threw for 4 touchdowns, 160 yards in this game, and he's a really talented thrower of the football, and he is the better passer of the two. Um, but do you roll with Delora and work the ground game with Antonio Wimbush, which is a great option as well? They're just kind of teetering in between both options. And ultimately, I think it ended up costing them. Like they very nearly won this game despite themselves. But Vegas controls their own destiny and they can clinch a playoff spot with a win. And I think they could still get a home playoff game, but they need to win out and get some help from some other teams. And they need to see either Arizona or Vegas lose a game or two over these next couple of weeks in order to do so. But the next game we're going to talk about is the San Antonio Gunslingers at the Jacksonville Sharks, and this was a big time shocker. Through like of all the games, this is probably the most shocking result. San Antonio won this game 46-31. So this game came out of nowhere, and myself included, I thought Jacksonville was going to roll in this game, and San Antonio was actually the one doing the rolling for a change. So this is a tight game in the first half. San Antonio was able to just continue to pile on throughout the game, and the defense was able to get stop after stop on the Sharks offense, especially in the second half. And Joaquin Colazo had a day going 18 for 20, 159 yards and 6 touchdowns through the air. And he was able to find Callie Rashad 3 times, Keyshawn Harper 2 times, and then Austin Upshaw 1 time as well. And this Gunslingers defense, they were flying around the field, making play after play in the second half. Ravarius Rivers had one of the most impressive interceptions that you'll see in all of indoor and arena football, and it would have truly set the internet ablaze if this sport knew how to market itself. But that's an entirely different podcast, entirely different topic that we'll dive into in the offseason. But San Antonio's been out of the playoff race, but this showed some promise in what this James Fuller offense can do with a quarterback like Colazo if they're able to bring him back next season and maybe bring back some of the pieces at wideout to complement it and start to see something build off of the success that they had in this game. And it's just been wildly inconsistent for San Antonio up to this point. But this game showed like, all right, when all things are going well, this is what this team could be. But for the Sharks, they started hot with a long touchdown on their first play of the game, and it looked like it was going to be another pile on game for the Sharks where they were going to score 50, 60 points and just run away with it. But after that first play of the game, things kind of deteriorated a little bit, and the San Antonio defense started to lock in a little bit and really put the clamps on the Sharks. And Tyler Huff looked good in the beginning. And it seemed like the defense started to figure things out as the game progressed, and they were really able to bottle them up. And this was a close game. I think this game was tied 19-19 in the first half, and San Antonio was able to pull away, and Jacksonville just couldn't get the car started in the second half. So Karan Ashley led the way with 8 catches for 76 yards, and Marcus Rogers and Jaden Stoshak each hauled in a receiving touchdown. But you might need to have the finger over the panic button if you're a Sharks fan here. Not necessarily pressing it. I'm not saying press the panic button. That's not at all what I'm saying. I'm saying it just at least the button needs to be on the desk. Like it needs to be within eye shot, because if you win this game against a 3-10 team coming into your home arena, you lock up a playoff spot. They couldn't do that. You drop it, and now you have to go through Tulsa, who just recently signed Sam Castronova, who Sharks fans are very, very well aware of what he can do at the quarterback position. And then Green Bay, who's white hot as well and is capable of dropping 50, 60 on any given week, as Sharks fans experienced firsthand when they got a 70 burger dropped on them earlier this year. So the Sharks are in a position where they could potentially get the number 1 seed if they went out and get some help. They could also miss the playoffs entirely with 2 weeks remaining. So if you're a Sharks fan, you're like, all right, guys, what are we doing here? Like, come on, let's make the dance. But they should be able to make the playoffs. Not making the playoffs would be an absolute doomsday scenario where everything that could have possibly gone wrong for the Sharks goes wrong, and it's not off the table, but it's exciting and terrifying at the same time if you're a Sharks fan these last couple of weeks. But the next game we're going to talk about is the Fishers Freight at the Iowa Barnstormers, a game that had no playoff implications whatsoever. But Fishers ended up winning this game 58-50. And something about Fishers, man, if you take out that 9-game losing streak in the middle of their 2 winning streaks, the Fishers Freight are sitting at 5-0. So just take out that pesky middle of the season thing, and they'd be looking golden right now. They'd be looking great. But they've really turned things around with quarterback Felix Harper. He came over from Massachusetts earlier this year, and he's really unlocked the full potential of this offense, and which makes sense. Like he has experience with Coach Wooten in Bay Area from the past couple of years, and I know Coach Wooten was catching some heat on some of the forums about rolling with Felix Harper instead of rolling with Vincent Espinoza, who played hero in that comeback win over Green Bay. But the way Harper has been playing, it's got to feel vindicating if you're Coach Wooten. He had four total touchdowns in this game, two passing, two rushing. He had a 2-2 game, aka the ballerina. That's not a thing, but we're going to make it a thing. But what they were able to do on the ground as a team was most impressive to me. They had 164 rushing yards as a team, 4.8 yards per carry, and five touchdowns on the ground. And like I said, Harper was in this Wooten system in Bay Area, so it's not surprising to see him come in and make a positive impact the way he has. And it just makes you wonder, man, what if they had him from the beginning? Like, would the freight be staying at 5-9 right now? I don't know. But for Iowa, it's another Iowa game. And if you watched any Iowa Barnstormers football this year, you know exactly what I'm talking about, where passing wise, they were able to light it up. James Cahoon played well, 205 passing yards, six touchdowns, three to Keon Williams, two to Caleb Hood, one to Raheem Harvey. They just couldn't get any stops on defense, and they just could not get off the field and give their offense a chance to win it. Defensively, they gave up a score on every single possession, and they are just marching closer and closer to cementing their spot as one of the highest points per game allowed in IFL history throughout an entire season. Like they're going to have to give up like maybe 20, 30 points a game over the next two games to even like come close to not securing that spot. Their defense has just not been playing good, and Barnstormers games, they've featured a ton of points this year, and the over has been a bettor's dream when it comes to the Iowa Barnstormers this season. And unfortunately for Iowa and Iowa fans, other teams have been doing the majority of the scoring. So you really hope to see a legacy franchise like the Iowa Barnstormers be competitive and really be a team that can make an impact on the game. And you have them circled on the calendar. And right now they are circled on the calendar, but for the wrong reasons. And you hate to see that from a team like the Barnstormers. But we'll have to wait till next year to see what changes are made to make that happen, to potentially flip that around. You would think that they have to change something. They have to roll with something, but we'll have to wait and see what that ends up being. But sticking in the East, we're going to talk about the Green Bay Blizzard and the Quad City Steamwheelers now. And Green Bay won this game 58-52. And this was a must-win game for Green Bay in the Eastern playoff race. And they come on strong and just kept on trucking on offense to take advantage of a Steamwheelers defense that was missing some pieces. And the Blizzard took advantage of that in a big way. Max Mailer played out of his mind in this one, going for seven total touchdowns, four through the air, three on the ground. 200 passing yards, 73 rushing yards. He was Offensive Player of the Week in the league yet again. And when he's hot, there are not very many teams that can beat this Blizzard team in a shootout. He found four different receivers for touchdowns in this one, and this offense was cooking, and they showed why they are the top scoring offense in this league. And defensively, they started out great and gave the offense enough of a path to jump out to an early lead, but in order to make a run in the playoffs and to be able to, survive the East and survive and advance in the East, they're going to need that defense to draw some inspiration from that 2024 unit that was so good and so talented and create more turnovers and get more stops. And because this offense is doing more than enough to pull their weight, they just need that defense to step up a little bit. So 2024, defensively, they were outstanding. Offensively, they were able to pick and choose their spots and score when they needed to. But now it's the opposite. The offense is outstanding, and the defense has moments of inspiration and moments of, all right, they're starting to turn the corner, but they just need to turn the corner all the way. And this Green Bay team is going to be very, very scary for any team in the playoffs in the Eastern Conference. But for Quad City, this one stings because a win in this game would have almost clinched that one seed for them and put them in a very, very desirable spot over the last 2 weeks. But they just couldn't really get going out of the gates. And they're honestly not a team that's built to play catch up. And especially against a team like the Blizzard that was showing no signs of stopping. Quarterback Daquan Neal had 193 passing yards, three touchdowns through the air. And didn't have as much of an impact on the ground as we're used to him seeing. And this offense is at its best when Neal is really able to stretch that defense out with his running a game and control the pace of the game and toss a deep ball over their head to keep them honest. But falling behind 14-3 early put them in a hole they could never really crawl out of. And the scoreboard is a little bit deceiving because they did score in garbage time to make it close. And Green Bay, for some reason, did a surprise onside kick with less than 1 minute left in the first half that Quad City was able to return for a quick touchdown. So if Green Bay doesn't do that, it's probably a two possession game heading into the third quarter, and Green Bay probably would have piled it on from there. So this scoreboard was a little deceiving, but Green Bay controlled this game from the very beginning. Tamori and Terry at wide receiver was able to haul in 4 catches for 95 yards and 2 touchdowns. Jared Ware had some ground support with 2 touchdowns of his own, but they just couldn't get the stops on defense to really enable them to catch up and get ahead. So, like I said earlier, the Steamrollers were missing a few names on defense that would have helped get the defense off the field, but they still should have found a way to get at least one or two or more than the one or two stops that they had to really give their offense a fighting chance. But Quad City still controls the race to the 1 seed. They can potentially clinch it this upcoming week, but they're going to have to win and get a little bit of help from some of their Eastern Conference frenemies in order for that to happen. And speaking of Quad Cities, Eastern Conference frenemies, we've got the Massachusetts Pirates at the Tulsa Oilers, and Tulsa won this game in double overtime, 35-28. So this was another game that was outstanding. Very, very fun to watch. It was a thriller. And just looking at the scoreboard, 35-28, you're like, what are you talking about, Trey? Like, it's, the underhit. Ew, gross. How was that a thriller? It was good. It was a really really good game. If you just go back and watch the game, the storytelling, the pace of the game, the home crowd of Tulsa was electric, and it was just a fun game to watch. And Tulsa made a couple roster moves this week that I'm fairly confident have never happened before. I don't have the stats to back it up, but it just seems highly unlikely. They went and signed Carl Robinson III, the NAL MVP from the Beaumont Renegades after the NAL season's wrapped up, and then they also signed Arena Football One MVP Sam Castronova, who won the championship in the AF1 as well. So they signed two MVP championship winning quarterbacks from other leagues in the same week to come in and help turn their season around. And Cashinova ended up getting the start and got off to a rough start on this one, but that's to be expected, right? On short notice, very limited practice, and he was able to get it going eventually, and it was fun to see him let it rip. Cashinova, friend of the program, had 3 passing touchdowns and 2 rushing touchdowns while doing a lot of his damage on the ground to get things going in the first half, and eventually got that passing game in motion in the second half. Juju Augustine was that main vessel for this passing attack, hauling in 7 catches for 72 yards and 2 touchdowns. And defensively, Dylan Petway, friend of the program, had a monster game, absolutely monster game in this one. 4 solo tackles, 15 assisted tackles, 2 tackles for loss, and multiple clutch plays down the stretch to give the Oilers the win. And this game should serve as a warning to the rest of the league. This was the chance to knock out the Oilers. Like this game was the worst that the Oilers are going to be for the rest of the year because they only had Robinson and Cashinova for a very limited time this week, and they were able to get a win. So you give them another week of practice to get things under their belt, to get two of the most talented quarterbacks time and repetition with their wide receivers, with the offensive coordinators, with the team, and suddenly this offense, it seems like they might be able to build on this and really get some momentum behind them. And when you get that offense going behind a defense that has played great all season, look out. Look out. Tulsa's it looked like Tulsa was dead in the water a few weeks back when TJ Edwards went down, but they saw their roster, they knew what they had, and they signed a couple quarterbacks who can put them back in win now mode. And Tulsa can do that, and they've got a couple games that will be tough, but they've got the roster to be able to rise to the occasion. But for Massachusetts, this was theirs for the taking, and they just couldn't put Tulsa away. Kenji Bahar, he had a great start to this game. He threw 3 touchdowns in the first half, but couldn't really get the offense flowing in the second half. And it was looking like Kenji was going to have a fantastic game and picking apart this defense, but that second half, they could not get anything going. The Pirates, they had a bunch of bad penalties, which They lead the league in penalties, not surprising to see. And they had some bad snaps down the stretch that put the offense in some really tough spots. And it looked like they shuffled the offensive line a little bit. I don't know if that's due to injuries or travel or what the deal was, but that certainly didn't help with the snapping and line troubles and all that. But this was a massive opportunity for Kenji to put the team on his back and will the team to victory. And I know I've been a little harsh on Kenji, and I know some folks, Chris, have not been too happy about that. But this game was the opportunity for him to put the haters, air quote haters, to bed, and they just couldn't get it done. Puka Williams played really well in this one and bailed them out of some really tough spots and put them in a position to win, but they couldn't get that chip shot field goal at the end. Went to overtime and couldn't do anything in overtime either. So the Pirates are going into next week. They're still in playoff contention, but they need a win against Green Bay to keep their playoff hopes alive. Otherwise, they might be walking the plank very, very soon. And so if you're not a fan of that pirate wordplay, I don't know what to tell you. But the next game we're going to talk about is the San Diego Strike Force at the Arizona Rattlers. And Arizona won this game 46-43. So San Diego, they jumped out to a big lead in this one, but similar to what we've seen from them earlier this year, they let teams back in the game. Specifically in the second half, that third quarter is one where we have seen San Diego leads shrink dramatically, and Arizona is able to pounce on what has been the trend for the Strike Force this year. The San Diego was leading all game until about midway through the fourth quarter. They had a 16-0 lead in the first quarter at one point, and they had a chance to go ahead in the final minute, but got denied in the red zone. And Nate Davis at quarterback didn't have his best game, but didn't really have any real backbreakers either. He had 126 passing yards and 2 touchdowns through the air. He had another one on the ground for the second consecutive week in the red zone in a read option in a read option play. So teams are going to have to start accounting for Nate Davis in the read option, which is pretty crazy to say out loud. But the special team showed up early for San Diego as well. Ernesto Lacayo, friend of the program, got an early deuce, and Devin Hafford had a kick return touchdown in the second quarter. But the theme of the game for the Strike Force were the plays that they didn't make in the second half rather than the ones that they did. And multiple times this year, they've had sizable leads and they've just let teams back in. Like we think back to, what was it, week 3 against Vegas? They had a massive lead against Vegas. They left the door open. Vegas came back and won that game, stormed back. Recently against Bay Area last week, they ended up winning that game, but they had a sizable lead heading into the second half and they let Bay Area back in it, right? So um, they're looking good to make the playoffs, but need to be able to control the games in the second half in order to make our run. And they have an opportunity to clinch at least one home playoff game, which I know is something that they're wanting so badly. But they're going to have to start showing up in these second halves and holding on to these leads that they build in order to be able to host that game in Oceanside. But for Arizona, their wild season continues. They went from the 4 seed and potentially being on fraud watch. And up, I'll say it. I had them on fraud watch. To potentially miss the playoffs entirely, to suddenly being the 2 seed and having an outside chance at home field throughout the entire playoffs. So the Rattlers started slow in this one, but they got re-energized by a big kick return touchdown by Ron Brown Jr., who's just been a major spark plug for them over the entire season, and as Shannon Brooks has had to miss time. But Dalton Snead eventually heated up in the second half, or in the into the first half and into the second. 6 total touchdowns for Snead, 5 passing, 1 rushing, as the offense kicked into gear and they started to look like the Rattlers team that we're used to seeing, not the one that was on a 4-game losing streak earlier this year. Arizona took that lead late, but they made a surprising decision to onside kick it with the lead. And I think it was like just under a minute or just over a minute. I think it was just over a minute left in the game, and the defense was able to stand tall, and the strategy worked. And it led to an all-time meltdown by Kevin Guy in the post-game interview. So go watch it on the Off the Wall Twitter X feed, and Arizona posted it on their feed as well. Kevin Guy with an all-time rant. Don't ever question me, baby. Look at those banners in the air. He was fired up. He was ready to dunk on his own fans. Love to see him fired up like that. And the Rattlers are starting to regain that championship form from 2024 at the perfect time. And they're going to be a tough out in the playoffs for anybody. And it would not shock me to see them go back to back because they're starting to work out the kinks. And starting to look like the team that we know that they can be with 2 weeks left in the season as they're continuing to not just fight for a playoff spot now, but fight for home field in these last couple of weeks. But the last game we're going to talk about is between the Tucson Sugar Skulls and the Northern Arizona Wranglers. I will say it may have taken Northern Arizona 17 weeks to get here, but this was their most complete game of the season across all phases of the game. Ramon Atkins absolutely lit it up, 220 passing yards and 6 touchdowns through the air. And as a team, they were able to get 3 touchdowns on the ground, and they were averaging nearly 5 yards per carry. Deshaun Stoudemire at wide receiver had a big game, 7 catches, 116 yards, and 3 touchdowns, with Marlon Cook catching 2 more, and Arlen Bruce, the fourth, hauling in another. And the offense was clicking and took advantage of every single mistake that the Sugar Skulls made to really put a dent in their playoff hopes. Because Northern Arizona, they've been out for a little while, but technically Tucson was still alive in it and had a chance to sneak in, or had a better chance to sneak in if they were able to get a win here. And if you can't make the playoffs, what's better than dragging your rivals down with you? And that's kind of the mindset that Northern Arizona had here. And I really like the core that Northern Arizona has had with Ramon Atkins at quarterback, Nolan Suso at running back, and then Deshaun Stoudemire at wide receiver. And if they can keep that group together into next season, I think they can make some noise in 2026. I think we'll see the coaching staff back and get another run with it. I really like what Ron James has done historically throughout his career, and I love Sia Burley as an offensive coordinator. And it just took some time to find the right pieces for what they were trying to do, and they eventually found it in Ramon Atkins. So hopefully they can run it back with that core, and we'll be able to see what they can do to build off of that heading into next season. But for Tucson, man, I was excited at the idea of them potentially making the playoffs because they're an absolute wild card. You watch any Tucson game, and you could see a game where they score touchdowns on every single possession. We've seen games where the defense was making game-changing plays to take over the game and making pick sixes and just really, really controlling every aspect of the game. But then they've also had games where they just straight up no-showed until the second half. You just never knew what you were getting with this Tucson team. And offensively, they played extremely well in this one, but just had a couple hiccups that Northern Arizona was able to pounce on. I will say, wide receiver Drew Dixon, he had one of the most impressive stat lines you'll see from any wide receiver in the IFL this year. 9 catches, 147 yards, and 4 touchdowns. And George Reyna was able to find Devontae Sapp Lynch for a fifth passing touchdown in garbage time to make this a one possession game late. Tucson, they're not out of it, but they need to win out, and they need to have Vegas lose out in order to get in. So the Sugar Skulls, them making a run to the IFL National Championship in their hometown, because the national championship is in Tucson, would have been awesome. But we're to the point now where you gotta bust out the rosary beads and say some Hail Marys in order for that to come to fruition at this point, just because it's not looking great. It's not, again, it's possible, just not looking great for them. And it's one I was like, dang it. What could have been? What could have been Tucson? We're going to dive into some TAL action from this past week. We got a couple weeks left in that season and some games that were very, very fun to watch. The first game we're going to talk about is the Iowa Woo at the Ozarks Lunkers, and Ozarks won this game 48-34. So Lunkers, they're the hottest team in the TAL right now. They just continue to have this offense flow through the combo of Tyler Kolka at quarterback and then Brandon Mackey at running back. And Kolka lit it up in his first game, and it looked like he was going to take over this league. But he had some trouble getting started in this one, but eventually found his way into a groove. But they were shut out in the first quarter, and they had to tinker with the formula a little bit to get into a rhythm. And he eventually did end up throwing for 250 plus yards and 5 touchdowns, but had 2 interceptions that made this game a little bit more suspenseful than I'm sure Lunkers fans wanted it to be in the final regular season home game. Mackey had a solid game on the ground as well. 72 rushing yards and a touchdown, as the Lunkers have really turned things around, and they've snuck up to 4-3 on the year with the playoffs right around the corner. And this Lunkers team is very, very fun, and I think they're the best social media account in the entire league. I know we've had some fun interacting on there between our accounts and theirs, but please give them a follow if you don't already, and buckle up for a great finish to the season, because this Lunkers team is very, very fun and very talented across the board. But for the Woo, they had some troubles of their own on offense after getting started in this one, and they leaned on the passing game a ton, despite some of the success they were having running the ball. Carlos Rogers at quarterback and running back Jeff Mack, they were averaging 6 yards a carry, but overall really couldn't get going in the passing game until that second half. And when it became a shootout that they just couldn't come back from with their own mistakes, that matched some of the mistakes that Ozarks was making. So it's all about capitalizing on mistakes that your opponent is making. But when you're matching them band for band, bar for bar with the mistakes that you're making, it's not good, especially when you're playing from behind and trying to catch up. Rodgers did end up with five total touchdowns, four through the air and one on the ground. He was finding Justin Brown at wide receiver 10 times for 94 yards and a touchdown. Then he found Vontae Henderson seven times for 104 yards and two touchdowns. And the passing game was dynamic. It was. But once it got going, it took nearly a full first half for it to get moving, for it to get grooving. And Iowa already has more wins than they did last year. And they'll look to see if they can make another run to Arena Mania in the playoffs. And yeah, it's something where I probably want to see them run it a little bit more and hopefully be able to have a little bit more success and be a little bit more balanced. Because if you're getting 6 yards of carry between your two top threats, you should hypothetically be able to march down the field. I know it's not that easy, but hypothetically, you should be able to lean on that a little bit more throughout the game and really, really buy your offensive time to get some things going and get on the board and get off to a better start than they did in this one. But speaking of better starts, we're going to move over to the Hot Springs Wise Guys and the St. Joseph's Goats. The Goats won this game 57-13, so only 13 points scored for the Wise Guys. And this was a massive win for the Goats. They got back to 500, and it was all behind the arm of Angelo Trujillo, who passed for 225 yards and eight touchdowns on the day as the Goats just ran away with this one from the jump. The talent depth for St. Joseph is just incredible at wide receiver. They've got several arena and indoor football veterans in wide receiver. Demarius Washington, who was with the Salina or was with the Southwest Kansas Storm earlier this year, and Salina in years past. Otis Odom, who was with the Liberty a couple years ago. Lorenzo Thompson, who was with the Sioux Falls Storm last year, and more. Like the talent that they have at the wide receiver position is just very, very impressive. And it makes sense when you see what they're able to do through the passing game and put up points in bunches like they have with some of the additions they've made over the past couple of weeks. But Washington ended up with two touchdowns. Thompson hauling in another. Ryan Martinez hauled in three more, and Boo Smith and Jamal Williams snagging one as well. So anytime you have five different wide receivers catching touchdowns, things are usually going pretty well for the team, pretty well for the offense. And the Goats are looking great heading into the final weeks of the season and should have put up a really great fight in the playoffs and should be a very entertaining matchup for whoever they get in the playoffs on the road to Arena Mania. But for the Wise Guys, it was a tough game. From start to finish, this was tough. They fell behind 26-6 at halftime, and they were forced into a lot of passing situations and didn't really capitalize on the strength of Jordan Ambrose's running abilities. The offense, or if you want to call whatever it was that they had, that only scored 13 points. The offense, it flowed through Terrell Brown and Aaron Dilworth when it was working. Brown 11 catches for 88 yards and a touchdown. Dilworth 8 catches, 73 yards and a touchdown. But they really just could not get things going consistently and punch it into the end zone. And the Hot Springs defense just had no answer for the Goats. They still could make a playoff run if they can regain some of the magic that they had in the regular season a couple weeks back against Ozarks before Ozarks got hot. But Hot Springs is in a tough spot, and you could say Hot Springs is in some hot water. That was bad. All right. Now, last game we're going to talk about is the Eau Claire Axemen versus the Duluth Harbor Monsters. And Duluth won this game 54-26. So Duluth continues to impress with their offense as they have all year and their opportunistic defense. That's a great combination to have. A quarterback, Javante Johnson, threw for 174 yards and 4 touchdowns. Found Marcus Sessoms for 2 touchdowns, Jamal Couch and Javari Flowers Jr. for 1 apiece as well. And they were just so consistent throughout this game and on offense. And like I said, they were able to get multiple stops on defense. And when you have an offense that doesn't stop scoring and then you have a defense that prevents the other team from scoring, that's pretty good. It's pretty good. And the depth that they have is just so impressive on all sides of the ball. When you look at defensively, Dante Mason, he had a really big game in this one, and he's been a very versatile player for this Duluth team, not just this game, but all throughout the year. 12 tackles in this one. He was just all over the field, and they've been able to make a ton of big plays on defense and really flip the momentum in their favor for good in the second quarter of this one and just starting to pile it on in the second half. So Harbor Monsters, they're looking strong. They're looking like they are the team to beat, which makes sense. They're the reigning champs, and they have to be the favorites to repeat at this point going into the final stretch to the road to Arena Mania. But it's still anyone's game, but Harbor Monsters are looking really, really good right now. But for the Axemen, it's been a rough go, just from start to finish. They have some talented pieces, but offensively they can't really seem to put together a complete game. Their passing attack just hasn't really been good, and their rushing attack hasn't been good enough to overcome the lack of passing attack, if that makes sense. Like you can have passing attack that's not great if your rushing game is incredible. You can have a rushing game that's not great if your passing attack is incredible. But if your passing attack is bad and your rushing attack is just okay, that's not a good combination. It's just not. And that's kind of what the Axemen have encountered in their inaugural season here. Jarius Grissom at quarterback completed about half of his passes for 146 yards and 2 touchdowns. And a couple of familiar names in the arena scene hauled in the touchdowns for him in Vincent Wilkerson and Deshaun Williams. And like I said, the Axemen, they've had a rough season and they've had a bit of a unique approach to their offense compared to some other teams. They have a lot more of these heavy set looks, while some other teams try to spread teams out a little bit more. They've been a little bit more traditional with like the three down linemen, a tight end, and a running back, while most teams are spreading the defense out a lot more all throughout the game. And it's evolved and ebbed and flowed throughout the year. I think at the beginning of the year they were running a lot of full house heavy sets, and they've had moments where I was like, okay, this is cool. This is a unique approach, but for the most part, just hasn't been great. They haven't won since week 2 of the season, and they have a couple of tough matchups in their final 2 games of the year. And they have the talent. It just seems like schematically it hasn't really worked out in their inaugural season. So we'll see what they tinker with and what they go back to the drawing board on, and what they can come back with heading into next year. But still a couple games left for them to play in this one, and maybe they can surprise us and pull out a win or two. And that's the show. Thank you so much again for taking the time to check it out, talking through IFL, talking through TAL, and talking about some of the fun games that we had over the past weekend. So if you have a chance to go back and watch that Vegas Bay Area game, go back and watch that Massachusetts Tulsa game, go back and watch that Green Bay Quad City game, go back and watch that Ozarks Iowa game. A ton of great games from this past weekend that were very enjoyable. So indoor and arena football continues to provide, and no matter what style you like, there's probably a team and a game out there for you. So go check it out if you haven't already, and come let me know on socials if you end up watching one of those games and what you think. You can follow us at Off the Wall FB. F as in foot, B as in ball, Off the Wall FB. We're on X/Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all the things and stuff. So give us a follow on there, and let me know what games you watched from this past weekend. What was your favorite game? Did you have one from the TAL? Did you have one from the IFL? What were your thoughts? I want to hear what you have to say and hear your perspective on things. And if you're watching this on YouTube, thank you for checking it out. Really appreciate you. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, share it with a friend, leave a comment, do all the things and stuff. Helps the algorithm out, and we're slowly building this thing out. And the support has been really, really awesome to see. So much appreciated. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please make sure you are rating the show 5 stars preferably on the show page, and leaving a review of what you like about the show. And hopefully we can encourage some other folks to join our tribe that we've got here. So week 18 of IFL coming up next week. Week 8, I want to say, of TAL coming up next week. Some exciting matchups, some exciting games. The playoff picture should start to take shape on both the East and West of the IFL after this upcoming weekend. And there's some really, really good matchups and really fun ones. So make sure you're tuning in. Make sure you're joining the conversation on social. And yeah, it'll be a good time. So there's only 24 hours in a day. In fact, they just spent about 40-ish minutes here listening to the show, listening to the podcast, watching the show, however you're consuming it. Really appreciate that. It means a lot. So hope you enjoy the upcoming week of indoor and arena ball. It'll be a good one. Like I said, come join the conversation on social, come say hi, and we'll see you next time. Bye.